Drivers, start your engines!
Pick the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him. He talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver. Pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger. No sweater working for the man, alright. Well, I wanna be a firefighter. Cool-headed when the heat is on, yeah. Save a baby from the burning building. Take her home with the sleepless sun, alright.
No, he didn't slam you, he didn't bump you, he didn't nudge you, he rubbed you. And rubbing, son, is racing.
Hey race fans, welcome to the Whoobazoo Radio Network. Welcome to Drafting the Circus. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we plow through all the racing news of the week. Before we get started, let me introduce you to the panel I have assembled tonight. With me in the studio, I have Mr. Gray Warren from Richard Childress Racing, Seth Eggert from Motorsports Tribune, Richard Youden, race engineer, and Joey Barnes, writer for Indycar.com and managing editor at Motorsports Tribune. Gentlemen, how is everybody tonight?
Doing great.
Doing good. Thank you.
All right, my guys, thanks for coming on tonight. Great weekend of racing. Kevin Harvick, back-to-back. Somebody called that on the show. Forget who that was. Oh, it was me. But again, the Ford cars just looking strong this year after they're whining and crying about having nothing new. Gray, what do you make of these Ford cars and this domination? And we're heading to Phoenix, which is Kevin Harvick's personal playground.
Well, you know, the Ford car ended last year running pretty well too, and of course I think they finished in the top 10 in most of the races that they ran last year. So, not surprised that the Ford car is doing well. You know, after all the belly aching that we heard in the off season about Ford being at a disadvantage and going to have to run the same body that they've had for the last 2 years, one more year before they get an upgrade, it is a little bit of surprise. But you can believe that the Ford camp went to work after last season and worked on things to get better. And like I alluded to last week, you know, we've all got our theories about what goes on, and I think too that part or maybe some of their resurgence is because of the new rules enforced on the body with the oncoming of the optical measuring system. I think that's kind of leveled the playing field a little bit and taken away some of the edge that the Toyota and Chevrolet teams were working in last year, and it's kind of brought the field back together. So that's just a theory. I'm not saying that's it, but that's one difference in when you compare it last season to this season. But wow, I mean he dominated at Vegas much like he did at Atlanta the week before. He had the best 10-lap average and the best 20-lap average, and at both racetracks, and he just destroyed the field essentially there the last 2 weeks. And again, the rest of the Ford camp ran pretty good and strong. Strong runs by Keselowski, strong runs by Blaney. Also, again, and other members of the Ford camp ran well too. And then, like you just said, we're going to Phoenix next weekend, which has been his personal playground for the last several years. He's got 8 wins there. So, things are looking up for a rousing start for the Ford car, in the 2018 season.
It's interesting, Gray. You mentioned the Hawkeye system there, 'cause I think that probably does have quite a big impact on what you're seeing from this Ford cars this year. At the end of the day, they've got a stable platform. They know what they're working from, and they can correlate the Hawkeye system to the old cage system far better than the Chevy teams can anyway, because it's a completely different body for them. Toyota are obviously in a similar situation, but again, probably don't have the same depth of knowledge and resource that the Ford teams do. So I think the fact they've got that continuation of the body and the change of the testing methods means that, as I say, they've got a reference and a datum point which they can refer back to. So obviously the areas that they can bend the rules, should we say, are still the same areas, but they have a better understanding of how they can do that with the current bodywork compared to previous years.
And basically, I think too that's to some degree maybe what's going on with their recent resurgence. And we've always known that the Ford engine, was never a problem, never an issue. The Roush Yates engines make good power, have always made good power, very reliable, very durable. So they've just got their act together. I think we'll see going forward. If these first few races are any indication, I think we'll see the other Ford teams. We'll see good runs with Keselowski and Logano, and of course Blaney's been at the front, been near the front at every race he's run in so far this year. So yeah, and the Menard team, the Wood Brothers team, they've had some good runs as well. So I mean things are looking up. Chevrolet right now, their standard bearer is Kyle Larson. He's been about the only one that has run well in all the races. The other Chevy teams have suffered some terrible luck. Jimmy Johnson, for one, he rallied a little bit, got off to a really bad start at Vegas, and was able to rally late in the race and ended up with a 10th place finish, I believe. But really, if you can look at that may be something to build a little momentum on for Jimmy going forward, because that's probably one of the better runs they've had in quite some time.
Great, you obviously have sort of quite close access to this, but obviously the Chevy teams are struggling a little bit this year with the new bodywork. Everybody expected them to catch up with Toyota and be pushing forward, and if anything, they've sort of dropped behind both the Ford and Toyota manufacturer teams. Do you think that is a symptom of the way that Chevrolet may be spreading themselves a little bit too thin, obviously with the two engine manufacturers, with Hendrick and Childress, compared to obviously the Ford and the Toyotas, who their engines are pretty much sort of an independent body from the rest of the other teams? There's they are struggling, and it's a coincidence they're all struggling. I mean, Larson's up there and Chase Elliott's been up there the last few weeks, but it certainly hasn't been as dominant as I think those teams hoped with the new body kit.
No, and I think, it showed promise at the beginning of the year, because when all the teams went out, well, I'll say all the teams that tested at Las Vegas preseason testing the end of January, there was one car from each organization that was allowed to go. Chevrolet were the fastest cars at Vegas, with Larson and Newman being the fastest. But I go back to one thing that Larson said after the Vegas test, and they were asking him, of course, this Camaro, this new Camaro in the Cup Series was much touted as an improvement over the Chevy SS going forward. And Larson seemed to say that he didn't really feel any difference in the car, where he felt an advantage over last year, that it was almost like they were holding serve. So I don't know. I don't think the engines are a problem. Both Hendrick and ECR engines, both well respected. I don't think that's like. I think basically that it's going to take some more development time in the wind tunnel for the Chevy teams to kind of to come back and do it. I think Daytona, you can throw out Daytona, the plate tracks, that's a different animal. But I think the two races that we've seen on the downforce tracks, Atlanta and Vegas, I think the Chevy teams are going to have to go back and just continue to work on developing that car to get somewhat in the ballpark, or to catch up with the other ones. I think we've seen good speed out of Larson and Chase Elliott, they've been the standard bearers for Chevrolet.
But do you not think that with the Toyota setup, I know Toyota have their TRD group, which does the majority of the aero development work for Joe Gibbs and Furniture Row as a sort of a knock-on there within that group. Obviously, Ford have got, Stuart Haas and Penske's probably their two main camps. But I think, again, they work very closely together. Do you not think there's the potential of a little bit of, how should we say, conflict of interest between RCR and Hendrick being the two main Chevy teams? There's that, we want to develop a body together, but we're not going to tell them everything because we don't want them to get bits of information, and vice versa. I remember that each of the main Chevy manufacturers was responsible for providing a super speedway car to develop the body in the wind tunnel, and another organisation did an intermediate body. But again, they probably won't be the latest spec body, because again, they don't want to show off all their latest and greatest ideas. I wonder if that's an issue.
It could be. I do know that Ganassi and ECR and Hendrick are working on several projects together. That's been going on since late last year. Some of the radiator stuff and things like that. I do know that there's several projects going on that they're collaborating on. I don't know how extensive that it is in other areas. But yeah, I could see what you're talking about, probably a little holding back from information. But I think, too, you're going to see a little bit of that, I would think, in the Ford camp, too.
Yeah.
Because obviously Penske wants to better, to be the better over Stuart Haas and vice versa. But I think with their agreement with Ford, they are going to share some stuff. Toyota is pretty much in a unique situation because they've just got Gibbs plus one.
Yeah,
and I think too, like I've said all along, the 78 group is a pretty sharp bunch of guys, and we saw that when the 78 was part of our organization at RCR. That was not a one-way street of information coming out of RCR to the Furniture Row group. It was actually that was a two-way street, and RCR benefited greatly from their association with the 78 during that. And I'm sure the Gibbs cars benefited from their association with Furniture Row last year. That's another topic too. The Toyotas have not been exactly setting the world on fire these first two downforce races too. The 78 has shown speed. He's had to come from the back, in two of these races, and has cut through the field pretty good. But he hasn't had the ability to get up front and race with the 4-car or overtake the 4-car. They're not far off, but they're still behind. And of course, the 18 has run pretty good, but the rest of the Joe Gibbs team has not performed. So Denny Hamlin hasn't been spectacular, nor has Suarez or Eric Jones. So I think everybody's maybe caught off a little bit off guard by Ford's dominance so far, and they're going to have to work to close the gap.
And some notes on Harvick. This past weekend, it was his 100th career victory across NASCAR's top 3 series, which puts him 4th on the all-time win list for the 3 national series combined. Richard Petty and David Pearson obviously being on top. You have Kyle Busch and now Harvick. And also, Harvick has never won 3 races in a row, and we're going to his personal playground, Phoenix.
And that he could, he's going to be tough. And I tell you, actually, he could be, if he comes out of Phoenix with a win and gets 3 in a row, he's going to be a serious threat to win 4 in a row because he runs well at California too, and is a former winner at Fontana. So yeah, I mean they have they've laid the gauntlet down so far, for these first few races, and everybody's riding in their wake.
Yeah, so let me ask you guys this real quick. So, I mean, we've come off of Atlanta and Vegas, which are two very similar tracks. We already had Daytona out there, which is a different animal all of itself. Play races, we always put them to the side. But do you feel like the going into Phoenix and then over to Fontana, that are two very different tracks from one another and very different from Atlanta and Vegas, that the Ford domination will kind of continue, or do you think we're going to maybe get a better idea of what the rest of the season is going to look like here? So,
well, we could. We characterize Phoenix as somewhat of a short track because it's 1 mile in length and is flat like a lot of the short tracks. So we're looking at a different style of racetrack. I think we'll have to just kind of look and see if the 4-car goes out there and runs like he has in the past. We'll look at it as, okay, that's the 4 team. But if we have the majority of the top 10 that races in are Ford cars, then basically we can start looking at a Ford juggernaut if you want. And then, of course, you back that up at California. But, we look at California. When we go to California, the team that's been dominant on the 2-mile tracks, Michigan and California, for the last several years has been Kyle Larson.
Right, in the Chevrolet, yeah.
In a Chevrolet. That team has found something that works well for them at those tracks. So, we're looking at the next 2 weeks being 2 totally different types of racetracks. So we'll go in and see if the trends that we've seen in the first 2, if they continue, or we see something a little bit different come out of those.
All right. So now, Seth, you're our resident statistician and keeper of the Xfinity and truck news. So I want you to just really briefly let's talk about the. Speaking of Kyle Larson, let's talk about the Xfinity race where Larson had a great run there, and fill us in on the truck race as well. Before we move on, we've got a couple of other great topics to discuss tonight.
Well, Larson pretty much dominated the Xfinity race. It came down to a battle between himself and fellow dirt racer Christopher Bell, and they had a pretty intense battle at times, but Larson just flat out ran away with it. In the truck race, it was a battle between Kyle Busch and Brett Moffitt, and it looked like it was going to be a good battle, except the lap traffic unfortunately got in the way. Michel Distier and Norm Benning both forced Moffitt into hard positions to actually run. Distier made contact with him. Benning basically ran him up into the wall, giving Kyle Busch the win on the last restart. And it was his 50th career Truck Series win, putting him one marker behind Hall of Famer Ron Hornaday.
Fantastic stuff there. So, and speaking of Hall of Famers, the 20 nominees for the NASCAR Hall of Fame have now been announced. Correct?
Correct.
So let's have a discussion about those Hall of Famers. And Seth, you've got the list. You want to run them down right quick, very briefly?
We have Davey Allison, Dee Baker, Red Farmer, Ray Fox, new this year, Harry Gant, Joe Gibbs, Jeff Gordon's on it for the first time, John Holman's on it for the first time. We have Harry Hyde, Alan Kulwicki, Bobby Labonte, Herschel McGriff, Ralph Moody for the first time, Roger Penske, Larry Phillips, Jack Roush, Ricky Rudd, Kirk Shelmerdine for the first time, Mike Stefanik, and Waddell Wilson.
Okay, now, Joey Barnes, since you've been kind of quiet there, writing a Formula One story in your off time, as you look down this list of Hall of Fame nominees, 5 are going to make it in. What are the names on there that just stand out to you? And we'll go around the table and everybody have a little shot at the Hall of Famers. But Joey, I want to start with you because you've been quiet.
I guess first and foremost, I'm not a fan of first ballots necessarily, considering all the historical significance of guys like Davey Allison and Buddy Baker, but Jeff Gordon definitely deserves the nod. So he would be one. I would probably go Ray Fox, my number 2, Roger Penske, my number 3, Mike Stefanik, 4, and probably it's a toss-up between Shelmerdine and Waddle Wilson. But that would be how I would orchestrate it, because I'm seeing too many guys like Ricky Rudd, Bobby Labonte, and Harry Gant, Buddy Baker, Davey Allison. They're all hovering around the same number of wins and the same type of success, with the exception of Labonte's championships. So I would probably lean more that route and let everything else kind of sort itself out in the next year or two.
All right, good insights. Now, Gray, I want to go with you because you're the probably the most knowledgeable about NASCAR on here. And what are your thoughts on this, the Hall of Fame, and who are the 5 that you would go with, and why?
Well, Jeff Gordon's definitely going to be a first ballot shoe-in. So basically, we're looking at probably 4 beyond him. NASCAR is always the group or the body that's always voted these people in has always given preference to former champions, of course, and that would take in Bobby Labonte being one of those, and the late Alan Kowicki. However, I think when you look at Bobby Labonte's got 2 championships in 2 divisions. And NASCAR has, like I said, the group stuck to that. But, would I put him in this early? I don't know. I've long been a proponent of John Holman and Ralph Moody getting in, simply because of the significance of the Holman-Moody group, or the Holman-Moody brand back in the 60s. A lot of the technology and a lot of the things that we continue to do to this day in modern stock car racing was developed in the by the Holman-Moody stable and the Holman-Moody garage many, many years ago. A lot of the same concepts in the way we construct the cars and how they're built. We still use those techniques, and some of the platform is the same that we did. And for those contributions to the sport, they have always been one of the people, 2 of the people that I thought should always be in. I like Roger Penske for his contributions as well. And then 2, you've got Ray Fox and Jack Roush. And we talked about Kirk Shelmerdine. When you compare Kirk Shelmerdine's record to Ray Evernham's, they're almost identical. Ray Evernham has 47 wins. Kirk has 46. When it comes to championships, Ray has 3, Kirk has 4. So, I mean, that's right down the line. They both worked with first ballot Hall of Famers, the late Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon. Those 2 guys' careers mirror one another. They were almost, not quite contemporaries. Kirk came along a little bit. He was in the height of his career before, as Ray was getting started. But both had very similar careers, and I think Kirk's very worthy. But I'd have to say, based on that, I would say Ralph Moody and John Holman for sure, Jeff Gordon, and then my other guys would be probably Ray Fox and Waddell Wilson. But again, everyone's very deserving. You just asked me to pick 5, and there they are.
There you go, yeah.
I think Ray just picked 21 out of 20 there.
Well, I discussed a lot of them.
He just said, you know what, Richard, don't be mean to Gray. He's our friend. Now, Richard, okay, since you had to speak up, as an Englishman who grew up watching Formula One racing, I noticed Colin Chapman's not on the ballot, so who are the ones that you would pick?
Kimi Räikkönen. because he ran NASCAR in the Truck Series, and I think he's got an Xfinity start.
Yeah,
that's
Jacques Villeneuve, yeah.
Juan Pablo Montoya.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably the most successful. Yeah. I think it'd be interesting to see how they go. I think NASCAR. I don't know how much they go on popularity or history. I mean, if they go on popularity and they're trying to attract current viewership, I mean, you're looking at guys like Joe Gibbs, Jeff Gordon. You're probably going to throw Roger Penske in there. Guys that are sort of well known to the modern fan, for want of a better word.
But I'm gonna stop you for a second, Richard. This is who you would put in, not who you think NASCAR is going to put in. We're not on the Hall of Fame ballot panel. I mean, they're going to put in who they want to put in, and it's going to suffer from recency syndrome. You know what I mean? Where you see guys like Bobby Labonte get in, or but just looking at it and knowing what you know, who would you put in?
I mean, I would put those three in. I think because of the impact they've had on the sport. Please understand, my relatively recent, conversion to NASCAR. Definitely those guys would be in there. I think for the long history in the sport, Jack Roush is going to be around there as well. Mm-hmm. And probably Alan Kulwicki as well.
Yeah, and you made a good point. NASCAR is gonna get the body that votes these people in is going to have some kind of universal. The people that they put in is going to have a universal appeal, because there again they want people to come to the Hall of Fame to see the people or see the artifacts and the things about the people they enshrine. And they're trying to get a new group of people and a younger, a broad spectrum of fans. Let me say it that way, from all the different eras of the sport. So they're going to try to appeal to everybody, and I can understand that, because obviously the Hall of Fame and the NASCAR Hall of Fame is a money making thing, and they've got to keep it going. And of course, it's got to have the fan interest to continue. So they will do a broad spectrum of inductees this time, and I think that's good. I mean, we can always debate who should go in and who should not, because everybody on this list is obviously worthy. It's just when will their time come to go in?
Absolutely. Now, Seth, you're next up to the microphone.
Now, before we start all this, I had 5 picked out, but listening to Gray, listening to Joey, I've actually changed 2 of my picks.
Oh, thanks. You don't listen to me. That's fine.
Well, yeah.
It's because you're English. Just kidding.
Jeff Gordon, again, there's no way he's not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I will say this. There has not been any Hall of Famer in the NASCAR Hall of Fame that has gotten 100% of the vote.
And it probably never will be.
I think Gordon might come closest to it, though.
Yeah, he may. He very well may. You had the same thing, with the baseball and football Hall of Fames. You think when these guys come up, you think, well, this guy's going to be a lock. And there's always 1 or 2 people that don't put him on his ballot simply because they think they hold this thing that nobody should be unanimous. For whatever reason, they do it, but that's kind of stupid. But I agree with you.
So that's true. So not even Richard Petty or Dale Earnhardt got 100% of the vote.
Neither of them got 100% of the vote. I want to say Richard Petty got 97%, and Dale Earnhardt Sr. got 95%. I want to say.
Yikes! Okay, and the more you know.
And I'm also going to put Alan Kulwicki in it, in my opinion. Again, he's a champion. Granted, there is a little bit of a what could have been syndrome there.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Mike Stefanik, because he is one of the only drivers in NASCAR history to win 9 NASCAR championships as a driver. Granted, they were all Touring Series championships, the Busch North, the Modifieds, but no other driver other than, I want to say, Richie Evans ever reached that mark.
Yeah, but he's very deserving because it's not the Sprint Cup Hall of Fame, it's the NASCAR Hall of Fame, and that's all encompassing. And that's the same thing. There's Jack Ingram, very deserving. Jerry Cook, very deserving. Richie Evans, all these guys very deserving and should be recognized in the Hall of Fame. And I agree with you and Joey on that. Mike Stefanik is another one. And with one person missing from that list that I think should be in, and hopefully will get nominated one day is the late great Sam Ard.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah, without a doubt.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Now I still have two more to go with. Kirk Shelmerdine, again, with his career essentially mirroring, or I should say Ray Evernham's mirroring Kirk Shelmerdine's. With Ray going in last year, it's hard not to see Shelmerdine going in either this year or sometime soon.
Mm-hmm.
And my fifth one, not because of what he did on the track, but also what he did off the track, Buddy Baker, between his race wins, broadcasting on TV, and his broadcasts on MRN, he brought a lot to the sport.
Another good one. Another good pick, Saul. Yep.
Yep, solid pick there. So I guess it's down to me, and I'll tell you what. As I look at this thing, just personally, I love Holman and Moody and what they've done to sport. So you can't have one without the other. You can't induct, Holman without Moody or Moody without Holman. So those two guys have to go in together. So that's two picks right there. Alan Kulwicki, I know, like Seth, Joey, Richard, you three guys are probably too young to remember that 92 season, and this is before we had a chase, before we had all the gimmicks. That was one of the best championship finales, the Hooters 500 at Atlanta. Alan Kulwicki came out on top. Now, obviously, I've got the Polish connection. Us Polish guys like to stick together, so... Somebody said the Wood Brothers didn't go together, but I think Kulwicki he was one of the last privateer team owners who just did it his own way and won the championship. And like Seth, like you said, there's that what could have been. All right, so that takes me to 3. I think 4. Roger Penske deserves to be in every racing Hall of Fame that there is, just for his contributions to the sport in general. He's raised the game of everybody who's competed against him. Roger Penske deserves that. Harry Gant, I just love that dude, man. I remember his, and Gray, you'll remember it. The middle 90s where he was, Mr. November or Mr. October or Mr. September. Yeah, I know it was in the fall. He won those 4 in a row, and then he crashed at Martinsville, and he said, well, his streak's over now, and then he come back to win that thing, and the thing, tape on him. A handsome Harry, that dude deserves a shot in there. And then the last one for me is going to be Kirk Shelmerdine, because Kirk Shelmerdine and Dale Earnhardt really helped bring NASCAR up from a regional series to a national empire. If it weren't for that team, along with other folks as well, and that should be recognized. So. That's where I'm at with that. So, any final comments on Hall of Fame stuff before we move on to talking about the IndyCar season opener at St. Pete?
Again, all these nominees are very deserving. They've all had. You can make a case for every one of them, and all of them have contributed to the sport of stock car racing greatly. And I think they're all good nominees, and I think it's going to be a tough task for the committee that comes up with the 5 out of this. And obviously going forward, some of these people will remain on the ballot and their time will come. But it's, we talk about the NASCAR Hall of Fame all the time, and when you compare it to all the other major sports Hall of Fames, NASCAR's deal kind of came late to the party. So there's a lot of catching up to do, and there will be for some time. But again, good solid crop of nominees this time, and hopefully congratulations to whoever gets nominated when they do it in May.
Absolutely, yeah. So now, Joey, you've been down in where were you last week? Homestead, watching the Monster Road Indy Series.
Yep.
Test. Yep. So, Richard, you're funny. Richard's asking me when's Danica on the list. Never. So, but
hey, it's called the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Records.
So. Oh, God, you got me off topic, Richard. Thanks for nothing.
Sorry.
So, but let's talk about the Verizon IndyCar Series. We're gonna go racing. You know, we've got the longest off season of any racing series. New car this year. A lot of driver movement. A lot of new teams in the series. New liveries. Exciting stuff. Joey, you saw testing down in where were you? Sebring.
I didn't go to Sebring. I was just at Homestead for MRTI, and then took the red eye back home.
No,
But,
Phoenix.
yeah.
You were in Phoenix. You were in Phoenix to see the IndyCar's test. You were down in Homestead to watch the MRTI test. Yeah. So what's the general mood and the general feeling among the competitors and the drivers? Because I know the fans are really excited to see this. I mean, this new car, folks have fallen in love with it at first glance. But how do you think it's going to perform on the track when we see them next Sunday, or this coming Sunday, rather?
I think it's going to perform excellent. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be teething issues when you bring something new out, and we've never been in a race situation with this new Universal Aero Kit. But there is a very unique buzz that I have never felt. It's just, I mean, I wasn't here for the card era or whenever the reunification was 10 years ago, but this is my fourth year, and there's a unique buzz that I've never felt before, and everybody I talk to feels the same way, and there's an extra pep in everybody's step. They know that they've got something. The momentum can really start to build in bigger steps than it has the last few years. So there's a lot of optimism for this season from everybody up and down the paddock, crews, teams, the organizations, IndyCar itself, other media. So there's a lot to like. I think when we get a chance to see this car on track, I mean, it's going to really mean that the talent goes to the front, where the former Aero Kit was more about bracing yourselves and not knowing if that thing was going to hold on in the corner, from what several drivers explained, because there was so much downforce on it. This brings back that technical skill of driving that brought together some of the greats from back in the day. So I think we're going to see more of that. And that's not to say the guys that succeeded in the previous Aero Kit era weren't talented. I think this is just going to tighten the landscape of talent even more so, because you're going to pay for your errors. You're also going to be rewarded for a lack of them. So I'm excited to get this thing going in St. Pete. I think that guys that there's going to be some surprises. I know you're wanting me to probably preview a little bit of the St. Pete thing. So if I'm looking at St. Pete and going in optimistically, I think the guys that typically run well there, like Ryan Hunter-Reay, like Will Power, are going to do well. I mean, Hunter-Reay's got 4 podiums but never won, and that's where he calls home. So I know, talking to him 2 weeks ago, he wants to win there bad. Will Power obviously is really quick there. Elio Castroneves goes from being in the cockpit to he's waving the green flag there for the race as the Grand Marshal, so that's unique. But the guy that I'm looking at, who I think is going to do some good things, I mean, obviously Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan have a lot of momentum from the Phoenix test, but I'm looking at a guy like Spencer Pigot, who's got a career best finish of 8th, but this car, he's tested the most out of any driver in it since we started manufacturer testing. Combine that with 2 partial seasons. This is his first full-time season there, so he gets to run road, streets, and ovals. And, he ran great at Long Beach last year. Should have gotten a top 5, made a late error, ended up finishing 8th. So I think that's somebody that I'm looking at on a street course who could probably go in there and get a new standard for his for a career best. I'm not going to predict a win for him, but I think a strong run and potential top 5 is definitely in the cards. And then I'm curious to see what guys like Rene Binder do in Juncos and what Carlin can do in their first race with Max Chilton and Charlie Kimball and how prepared they can be, because those are some of the new teams to fold. Harding Racing's fully committed for this year. In addition to that, seeing guys like Andretti Autosport, and can Marco Andretti back up what he started to showcase through off-season testing, because he's very confident with this type of driving style. He says he can feel the car. So he looks really optimistic and really strong, and the Andretti Autosport group as a whole is really tightened up. So it's going to play to guys' hands like that. It's going to play to guys who have graduated from Indy Lights and driven the IL-15 and progressed into this. So guys like Veach, Zach Veach, Kyle Kaiser, so forth are going to be pretty strong this season, and probably pretty strong in St. Pete right off the bat.
Yeah, so now that you mentioned Zach Veach, Zach made a comment that he wishes full-time debut would have been a few years earlier, but now he realizes maybe it's coming at just the right time because this particular car suits his driving style and suits his experience better than jumping into the old AeroKit era of the DW12. So now with that in mind, looking at the rookie class, because we've got a huge rookie class for this year. I believe we've got 9 total rookies, and I believe four of them are running the full season. I mean, what do you make of that? Is this going to be like, one of the best? We're going to see a couple of rookie winners this year. Or what?
That's going to be tough to gauge.
Yeah. But you think the car suits these guys better than previous years of guys jumping up?
I'll say this. This series is the most competitive racing series in the world, period. And we've seen somebody like Bourdais go from dead last year and work his way through cautions and management and just drivability and racecraft to win in St. Pete right out the gate with Dale Coyne Racing, a very underdog, underfunded team in comparison to the Roger Penske teams. So it's a strong possibility that one of those guys can upset the apple cart, especially given the background. Because I feel like guys like Charlie Kimball and Max Chilton, well, more so Charlie Kimball, and even Simon Pagenaud are going to have to kind of unlearn everything that they learned with the old car, where guys like Piggott, this kind of just resets things back to the way that they're familiar with. So I think a guy like Veach is probably my favorite for Rookie of the Year, looking at the outside looking in, just because the team he's on, he did have a little bit of experience. And somebody like Robert Wickens, who's incredibly talented, has a background in DTM, he's having to learn an entirely new product that he's never been in before, or been in a long time. So seeing all those things being put together, I would probably go Veach. I'm forgetting who the other 2 guys are that are full-time this year, but I know Binder's partial, Jordan King's partial, Kaiser's partial. So there's a flux of rookies that are on a partial campaign trying to push for a full campaign. But, I mean, all these flood of rookie drivers, the talent level, the additions of new teams, 3 teams. We got another one with Tom Burns Racing today announcing a partnership. And since we air on Tuesday, announced a partnership with Dale Coyne to put Connor Daly in the car for the 102nd running this year for the 500. So there's a lot of stability, and there's a lot of things growing here, and I think anybody can win in the series. It's so damn close.
Joey, one of the things that I always judge the health of a series with is car count, and it sounds to me like we're probably going to have a very healthy car count this year for the series. Basically, it's been around 22 cars started most races other than the Indy 500 last year. Will we see that probably bump up to 24 or 25 in most races this year?
I think the entry list says 24 cars for St. Pete.
That is correct. 24 cars for St. Pete,
and that's up 3 or 4 cars from what it has been over the last couple of years, and that's encouraging to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see that become the norm. I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if we eventually end up on the 26 to 28 number.
And that's terrific. I think that's, like I said, that's how I judge the overall health of a series is in car count, and that looks very good.
and I think the kicker here to remember about why we can pull off that many cars and it be healthy for the sport in some respects is with the potential for a new TV deal on the horizon, with the potential of a title sponsor on the horizon to help grow the sport in a different way. That helps the marketing side of it. But what helps the racing side of it is the fact that this universal kit plays to the strengths of every team up and down the grid, and the little team can win. This isn't so construed by aero development or massaging out pieces. The damper program is certainly a very pivotal part, but there's so many things that you can start doing. The teams can manufacture themselves now, even though certain things are limited. That we see. For instance, Chip Ganassi Racing closes down 2 teams, and all of a sudden here comes Carlin. Here comes 2 more teams. So some of the people from Chip Ganassi Racing have been spread all over the IndyCar series now. Carlin has progressed a lot of his Indy Lights guys. He said something around 80% of his guys have been bumped up to IndyCar. And, and when you look at that, everything compares good. The engineering side would also, from an Indy Lights standpoint, it's not just for drivers anymore. Engineers can translate some things and move some things from Indy Lights and move it up to the IndyCar program. Obviously, it's a little bit more technically confusing and for guys like me, technically confusing, but it's more intricate. But the fact of the matter is we can now see the Monster Road Indy really start to work now that we've got new chassis all across the board with USF 17 and USF 2000, the PM 18 and Pro Mazda, the IO 15 and Indy Lights, and now this new universal kit that's being put on these Indy cars.
Now, Joey, let's talk real quick about car count. Okay, so we're Indy 500. We're already up to 34 confirmed, right?
Yeah.
Connor Daly is 35 now. Right, so and then there's talk of another Foyt car, perhaps. Maybe he's 34. Buddy Lazier will be 35. There's talk of another, Foyt car. There's talk of another Rahal car with Oriol Servia. But now there's this little low grade quality rumor floating around that maybe the Indy 500 won't bump. They won't do a bump, and they'll let everybody that enters go ahead and run the race, and maybe they'll start 35 cars. What are your thoughts on that? Because I can tell you my thoughts, but I want to hear yours first.
Interesting question for me. I am a fan of tradition. I think the rules that are in place are perfect for the sport. When I look at racing in general, it's not meant to be all-inclusive. There's meant to be some sort of cutoff. And, because this is supposed to be about the best of the best prepared, the best drivers, the best team, the best owners. And, sometimes if you don't do all your homework to put together that effort, or you make a late run to put that effort, then, you get penalized for it. And that's how it should be. Those things should be penalized, just as, making sure that everybody does their homework should be rewarded. So, in turn, because this universal kit does present unique challenges to everybody across the grid, and because it also kind of levels the playing field off, it also allows those guys that may run the one-off and be a late announcement to come in and maybe, stir the pot some. We saw Harding Racing make their debut at Indy last year, and they go off and finish top 10. It was remarkable. It was a phenomenal story for them. So I think we're still going to see about 35 cars, 36 tops on bump day. I predicted 35 back in October, November. I thought we would have a natural bump day. And, let's be honest, that's part of the allure of the Indy 500 when you go through the history books is who's going to make the show and who's not.
Yep, that's going to be great.
But at the same time, you've got new guys wanting to get into the series, putting a pretty good investment, lining up a sponsor for the Indy 500.
Hey,
do you want to go ahead and send them home or not? Yeah, I'm not saying it's good or it's bad. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just playing devil's advocate from some of the, like I said, again, low grade quality rumor coming out of that knucklehead on the West Coast that likes to stir crap up.
But
I'll devil's advocate you on that.
But you go back.
If their investment's good enough.
Go ahead.
If their investment's good enough, their car should be fast enough. That's what you're going to say.
Pretty much.
There you go. So we'll see. I mean, you know what? In the Indy 500, we started 35 cars in 1979. We started 35 cars in 1997. Both for ridiculous reasons with rules that people didn't understand. But should we start 35 cars just to welcome new blood into the series? I don't know. You know, the jury's out. We'll have to see how that plays out. So, but
how do you feel about it?
Personally, it would not hurt my feelings if there were 2 extra cars on the grid. You know,
I tell you, I like the 11 rows of 33 with a bump day, because you go back to all those races back in the past when bump day was something special, and in some cases it was almost like a changing of the guard. You'd have an older veteran who'd been around the Brickyard for many years, and the latter part of his career, you know, he's struggling to make the show, and he didn't get in. I remember the year that Al Unser Jr. got knocked out on bump day. I mean,
and his teammate Emerson Fittipaldi.
Right.
Both those guys didn't make the field.
Right. And you think about the drama that and obviously, we look, I live in a NASCAR world. Well, God forbid anything like that happening, because that would take away the draw, and they think that, people wouldn't come, if Dale Jr. or something was in the race. But that just added that extra element to it that made, the Indy 500 special. 33 field, you start 33, the 11 rows of 3, and you had to earn your way into the show. I think that's that's part of the deal.
And I remember watching the last minute deals, because it used to be you qualify the car, not the driver, right? So if your car was knocked out, you had to go buy another car from somebody else, and there was these last minute deals made in the pits, right? To go, let me buy you. I mean, you remember Bobby Rahal trying to qualify in a Penske car, and didn't make the field when he aligned with Honda back. And then 2 years later, Rahal returned a favor and sold chassis to Penske, and they didn't make the field in '95. But you're talking, those were years when there were probably 39, 40 cars, and a lot of guys that just didn't even get close to the bubble. But now you're talking 2 extra cars, right? And just to bump out 2 guys who come there, you know what I mean? Times change.
We could have 3 or 4 cars, this time.
Wait,
really, it's going to be.
Could be 3 or 4, yeah, but
some intrigue going into bump day, and that's what you want. You want to develop that.
I don't know. I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted because I love the drama of bump day. Back in the day when there were 40 cars and you got 6 guys below the line and 1 guy on the bubble. Now you're talking 2 extra cars. This day and age, I'm like, put them all on the field, let them race. But I'm probably going to get beat up by any traditionalist for saying that. But this day and age, when we have to go reach out, and the Speedway have to send a check to Buddy Lazier to bring a car out just to get 33 in the field, the fact that we've got 35 that want to be in the field on their own accord, let them race. But that's just me. Joey, you are next.
Here's what I'll say about it is, I am a traditionalist in that respect, and I don't agree with including the extra 2 cars necessarily. I know it would somewhat put more eyes in health of the sport, but you also take away that drama element. The duels at Daytona were the most boring thing that I have ever seen at Daytona in the 20-plus years that I've been watching the Speed Weeks. It was ridiculous. So I don't want to see things like that. Now that we finally have an element to bring drama into qualifying, we should make sure that we continue with the tradition. We shouldn't be all-inclusive, because we need to make sure that those are the things that heighten up to why people watch. Those are why, here's the other thing to it, is if you're if you're one of those guys, if you're somebody within IndyCar also, and if you're one of the teams that maybe gets bumped, let's make a more concentrated effort on focusing beyond just the Indy 500 for teams. Let's find ways to shore it up to where they can show up to Texas or other ovals if they're an oval program like what Harding did last year. There's ways to make it work to where those teams can help build. I understand that the dream of running it is what everybody wants to do, but sometimes the dream doesn't happen on the first try. The dream happens on like the 15th. So there's got to be places I remember talking to Mark Miles 3 years ago, and one of the things he said was, we want to make sure that even though we continue to showcase the Indy 500 for everything that it is, because it is the greatest spectacle in racing, that we also do the due diligence to show off what else we have to offer, because we have a variety of racetracks that are exceptional, that showcase elite talent, and they deserve to be seen in a very, positive light as well. So I think that we need to also look at seeing these guys, like let's find a way to entice the guys that get bumped to, work on their team at another avenue of the schedule. So that way that sponsor that got bumped can still be showcased.
Right, he can come to the next race.
Yeah, because we got 24 at St. Pete. You're going to tell me that we can't show up with the same number at Texas, or maybe even at 26. So especially with this kind of car that, I'm sure we're going to be hearing about tire developments and things that help make it to where tires can be managed by the drivers for short runs, long runs, and things to be put more in the driver's hands continuously throughout the season. So we're going to run into a situation where this is going to be more in the driver's hands during the year at places like Texas, at places like Pocono and things like that, Gateway. So obviously Gateway's a small track to put 20-some-odd cars on, but, I mean...
Well, gosh, they ran 28 at Richmond back in 08.
Yeah, and they start 40. They start 40 big old stock cars on those tracks. So
they put 40 cars in Martinsville. Yeah, so 24
Indy cars. And another thing too, the Indy 500 is the largest field of the year. So you're going to have, if you go back years past, there's 11 more cars in the average field. So yeah, but you're right, Joey. It still gives them with the series. If you want to show health and growth, those same people that if they don't make the Indy 500, come back and go to Texas, go to some of these other races and get in. Same way in NASCAR. And you're right. You made the point about the twin 150s. This year there was no drama in it. The field was set. The 40 teams that showed up were already locked in the field. And I remember going to Daytona when there was 50 or 60 cars trying to make 43 spots, and every position in that twin 125 or 150 made a difference. And guys were fighting tooth and nail back in the pack and everywhere else.
I'm honestly kind of shocked when I think back to the duels that those drivers didn't just say, you know what, we're racing at night, which is a totally different track than what we're going to get during the 500 anyway. There's only 40 of us. We're not going to get bumped out. I'm just going to park this thing in the garage and keep my baby safe, because let's be honest, it's Daytona and you can go from 39th to 1st in 10 laps. So I'm actually shocked that didn't happen more.
I'm shocked at how many cars they wrecked in the duels. Yeah.
Yeah, that was surprising to me, because I predicted just a processional kind of an event where we're locked in. We're not gonna take a chance in damaging our primary. And lo and behold, they got up there and tried to mix it up and tore some cars up. So I was somewhat surprised in that.
Here's my final thought on this IndyCar thing, because I know we got another segment to do. Regardless of what they decide to do, if the whispers that you're hearing end up becoming reality, or if it stays traditional, whatever goes on, I think it speaks volumes to what the team at IndyCar have been able to do. Mark Miles, Jay Fry, and all the people they have in place, even the people that have helped grow the sport to this point that maybe aren't necessarily with IndyCar management as a whole, but maybe somewhere else. we have to really take a look and be appreciative to all the work that they've put in, because they're the ones that have helped grow this to where it is right now, which is as healthy as it's been since the reunification in 2008. So I think that step's certainly in order, and I think if there's other racing series around the world that can certainly take notes from what IndyCar's been able to do.
All right, guys, so we are up against the clock, only a few minutes left. So we've got to do our picks, and we got 2 picks everyone this week. You got to get a pick for the NASCAR race and a pick for the IndyCar race. And then next week you get a pick for the Formula 1 race, because they're not starting until or week after next, 25th. So Formula 1 did finish up their testing in the snow, so and all that. But I'm going to go for picks. I'm going to start with you, Richard. You got 1 NASCAR, 1 IndyCar.
Got to go for 3 in a row. Kevin Harvick and Ryan Hunter-Ray for the IndyCar race.
Okay, Seth, you got the next pick.
For NASCAR, I'm going to go with Alex Bowman. For IndyCar, I'm going to go with Joseph Newgarden.
Alex Bowman. That's a bold pick. Good for you. Gray, who do you like?
He's a golden there.
Well, tell you what, you were thinking right along the same lines I was, Richard. But I guess I'm gonna go with Dixon for IndyCar, and out at you got. Let's see, who do I want? I'm gonna say Keselowski gets the win at Phoenix.
At Phoenix, okay. All right, Joey.
Oh man, well, Seth and Gray just took the 2 picks I was looking at.
That's what I hate about Seth and Gray. They always take the good picks first. Damn.
I actually think that, let's see, I'll go Blaney on, I think Ford will just keep on keeping on. So I'm going to go Blaney on that, on the NASCAR side. And then I'm going to go Will Power on IndyCar side.
All right, good picks. Good picks for sure. I'm going to go Graham Rahal for the IndyCar race. The Rahal team has shown so much speed in testing, and Graham's pretty good on these road courses. Graham won his first race at St. Pete. NASCAR, Phoenix, I'd love to go with Harvick. You guys picked him, so I'm going to go Kyle Busch right there. And that'll be the end of our show, guys. I want to thank everybody that listens to the show. I want to thank the Whoobazoo Radio Network. I want to thank iHeartRadio. I want to thank iTunes for carrying us. I want to thank you, Gray, Seth, Richard, Joey. Great show tonight. And to you folks that listen, thank you so much. We'll talk to you next week. Good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Whoobazoo.com.
Enter website, enter website, enter website, enter website.